Hello and welcome to this session, where we will try to cover everything you wanted to know about SCOM 2022 in the 45 minutes that we have got assigned. If this does not cover everything you wanted to know and you want to know more, I am sure you can find me online talking about this subject a lot more. In fact, there's always a lot more to say about a new version and specific topics, such as upgrading to the new version. A little short about the speaker then as usual. I am Bob Cornelissen from the Netherlands. I have been interested in Microsoft server infrastructures in medium to large organizations for over 20 years. And I focus myself on monitoring and management technologies for over 15 years. People from the community and some customers have named me SCOM Bob, so the name kind of stuck with me. I am now a 10-year Microsoft MVP, and my work is to be the CTO and managing consultant at TopQore, which is a dedicated and focused group of people specializing in technologies such as SCOM. Now, in my spare time in the evenings, I play carom billiards. That is on tables without holes in the corners and sides. I play Libre style, which is supposed to be the easiest, but still gives me enough challenges for now. And I am also the charity ambassador for the House of Tales charity, which supports an animal shelter in Thailand with 70 dogs spread over 2 locations. Please look it up on Facebook or website, and we can really use your support to help these unfortunate dogs to have a better life. Now let's get started with a quick agenda for this session. I start by talking about the different versions out there and where this new version fits. Next, there is a list of changes which covers most of the session. We will touch upon migrating to SCOM 2022 in a very short time frame. We talk about supported versions of Windows, SQL, and agents in relation to SCOM 2022. And finally, we have some more slides. And I figured 5 items on this list was long enough already. So let us move on to the next. Now, when talking about a new version of SCOM, we do need to note which versions are currently found out there and what their status is in the support matrix as well. Starting with SCOM 2012 and 2012 R2. In July 2022, these versions are going to be totally out of support, and there has not been any update for those in several years. SCOM 2016 recently went into the extended support when the mainstream support got dropped. Of course, if you have extended support, you can hang on for several more years, but keep in mind updates will come less regularly for sure. We did have a semi-annual cycle with 2 versions, 1801 and 1807 a few years ago, but those went out of support a long time ago. Now we have a lot of SCOM 2019 out there currently, which is in the mainstream support for about 2 years still. And of course, after that, there will be 5 years of extended support. And now, after Windows Server 2022 released, also the new System Center Suite version of 2022 got released, with SCOM 2022 as well. As you can see, with the usual 5 years of mainstream and 5 years of extended support. If you are on those versions which are going out of mainstream support or even older, I do highly suggest moving forward into the newer versions if you have the licensing for it, and make use of the additions to the product. Since we are talking about new features or changes or fixes, let us have a look at some of those changes. Now, there are several on this list, and we do not need to list all of them on this slide. Since we are shortly discussing them, a few of them in the following slides. So let's have a look at the first one. Now, the first notable item on the changes list is the enhanced RBAC for admin roles in SCOM. I know many customers where this has happened. Somebody without deep knowledge of SCOM is being made a full SCOM admin, because they need to be able to do one small thing from within the SCOM console, which is only available for SCOM admins. Now, the first reason is for auditors. This new profile for a read-only administrator gives you the possibility to let somebody view all settings within SCOM, but not be able to change any of them. This actually makes it ideal for an auditor to be sure he or she sees every setting for you, every setting that you set, and for you, on the other hand, for the other audit processes to be sure that they cannot change anything without clicking around. A second reason I come across often is when several team members of the server operator team need to be able to add or remove agents, for example. Also, often I see reasons such as being able to edit run as accounts, like their passwords, and adjusting notification channels. Now, you can see in the picture on the right-hand side that there are several categories which are often split up into multiple rights. This way you can create a custom delegated admin role with just the specific rights a group of your delegated admins need. There are several scenarios where this fits perfectly and has been a source of discussions for years. I like this addition a lot, so we can avoid having a lot of people into the full SCOM admins role and having too many people potentially make changes, which should not be done. Another interesting point is that this is essentially a read-only administrator with view access, and you grant the custom delegated admin role the specific change right that this group needs, which is in this list. Also, this role can be scoped to a group for some of the monitoring views, for example, and items like tasks can also still be limited. Now, back in the old days, we were able to close alerts coming from monitors. Of course, this often caused problems when an alert got closed and the monitor and resulting state-based dashboards were still colored red. In SCOM 2019, the decision was made to have SCOM check the state of a monitor when closing a monitor-based alert. If the monitor was still not healthy, it would refuse to close the alert. It would give you a pop-up saying it didn't work, and even in the state of the alert, you could see that the alert was not closed because the state was not set to green. Of course, you can still go into the Health Explorer and forcibly reset the health state back to green, which will automatically close the alert. And in many cases, this was a valid solution as well, because you should fix a problem first instead of closing your eyes to it by closing all of the alerts. However, this does not cover all cases. Also, there are places where the closing of alerts gets done through connectors and other tooling. So there were many people who wanted to get back to the old method. Now, in this version of SCOM 2022, another option is added in the settings menu where we can choose which option we like best. The first option is similar to SCOM 2019. The selected option in the picture is new and does not exactly do what it used to do until a few years back. This option just does a health reset in the background while you close an alert from a monitor which is not yet set to healthy. When the problem is still there or when it comes back, the alert will reappear. This behavior also shows up in the history tab of the alert, which got closed. So this makes it better than the old method because this should not leave red states behind after closing the alerts. So it might actually be the best of both worlds in that case for most of the monitors. Keep in mind that some monitors do flip back and forth, within even a minute when, for example, a Windows service is still not running or when a threshold is still being breached. Some monitors rely on event log entries, and they might only come in, once an hour, once a day, or only when the issue happens. So in that case, you might lose some of the monitoring. Okay, one of the great things about SCOM is the ability to run tasks to try and solve an issue or to start something. However, unless you use custom user roles with very specific tasks selected, which only that user role can run, and probably scoped to a selective group of agents, you will find out that any role of operator or above has the ability to run tasks against almost anything in the SCOM console. This does cause some security concerns with several companies. Now, this is a problem in two steps actually. As you are probably aware, when you click any task, it gives you two options. You can either use the predefined RUNAS account, or you can type in your own credentials. Most people did not enter the credentials to start with and just use the predefined RUNAS account, which on most agents is local system and has a lot of rights. Since SCOM 2019, a person running a task using their own credentials also had to have run as a service rights, which are mostly not granted automatically to users. So with that, the first option got used even more, especially because it often is successful. To circumvent the security concerns, there's now an option to disable the predefined account as an option while running a task for SCOM operators, which do not have SCOM admin rights. This will force them to use their own credentials to run a task if they want to. This applies to user roles such as operator and advanced operator. Also, this has been a regular ask from the community, which got added to the product now. Another item on the list is for the notification channels. While creating a new notification channel, we had the options of email, command, which is basically a script, SMS text message, and instant message. Now, for a while now, Steam has been a common tool for internal communications, and older communication types are going out of support, such as Skype for Business or even older mechanisms. Now, this is why there's now a new notification channel option added for Microsoft Teams. With this, you can now create a channel using a procedure found on the doc site to be able to send an alert into a team site on the posts page. This results in a post such as this one on our Teams. There's no interaction with it as such. It is the same as the email channel where you just get the alert, and that is it. So there are other options out there for Teams connectors, which either send more data across or have interaction possibilities. But this one is now the built-in functionality. All right, previously, when you were installing a new SCOM instance, with the SQL being on an always-on cluster, you had to do a number of manual steps extra. Now, this was to make sure that the rights were set correctly on both the active and passive nodes, and that the master databases on the passive node also had the SCOM-specific error codes loaded, and a few more of these items. Now, as we also can see when doing our SCOM health checks at customers, these steps were often forgotten, which can lead to strange things when a failover is done between the nodes. Now, the new setup and upgrade wizard in 2022 takes care of those steps now as well for you during the installation phase. Now, I am sure that this will help a lot, and we will see a lot less of these errors popping up in our health checks. Now, the next item on the list is called the Improved Install Experience. This points to a number of adjustments. The first three have to do with upgrades from SCOM 2019 to SCOM 2022 in order to retain some of the customizations that people might have made on the server level or at the agent level. Now, there are a number of registry keys where you may have made customizations, which will be kept while upgrading. Mind you, this is not all of the registry keys. This is just a limited set. You can find them on the doc site later. The blue entry in the middle there points to an in-place agent upgrade where the custom install path was chosen in a current version. So in the current version, they used a different path. Now, in that case, the customized path, install path, will be retained while upgrading to the new version, which will be then installed in the same path. And support for .NET 4.8 got added for the setup wizard as well. We see .NET support 4.8 popping up in several places on the supported list, by the way. Now, this item was taken out of the previous list and has to do with group managed service accounts. The advantage of group managed service accounts is that you do not need to remember or reset passwords for those service accounts all of the time. This is all handled for you. The support for these got added in an update rollup of SCOM 2019. Now, once you had your SCOM infrastructure on that update rollup and you have implemented full GMSA accounts, and you later decided to add a SCOM management server, you had a problem. Because the SCOM 2019 RTM installer did not understand the GMSA accounts, which it now gets told to use. Now, you did not have the update rollup installed yet at this moment on your server. So it is kind of a catch-22. Now, in SCOM 2022, also the clean installer, so the RTM installer, understands GMSA accounts from the start, so you will not have that problem again. So this is a big advantage to especially a number of organizations where we see this used a lot. Now, for Linux agents, a self-signed certificate is created by the Linux agent at installation and next sent to the management server for cross-signing with the SCX certificate and to encrypt it. Now, this encryption is now based on the SHA-256 going forward. Now, this is to raise the security and encryption levels going forward for also the Linux monitoring side. Now, this was actually one of my requests. In SCOM, it is important to know if an alert comes from a monitor or a rule. They can be treated differently based on the circumstances. I always try to tell operators to look at this place in an alert to see if it is coming from a monitor in this case, or to add the repeat count column as a column and see if the repeat count is higher than 2. So you can be sure that it is from a rule. But if it is lower than 2, you actually cannot use that trick. Obviously, as you can see in the picture, this requires clicking some alerts one by one to find out if it is a monitor or a rule. In SCOM 2022, a column got added called alert source, and it simply states if an alert is from a monitor or a rule. Simple and effective, and now we know what to do with these alerts. Now, the next change has to do with the alert tuning feature in SCOM. Now, this is a feature that a number of people are using when they are not using third-party specialized tools for override tuning. So when we select a management pack to tune, and we select an alert, and we want to see the sources of those alerts, we had a pop-up saying just the class object name. Now in the example over here, that is the default website at the picture at the front. Now, since there are many websites in your network called like that, or for example, a C drive, which lives on all of your Windows servers, you still don't know what the source is. Now, I asked the team if they could do something about it, and they did. An additional column now got added, which tries to catch the source path full name, which is in this case the computer name. This cannot catch every option because of the class model, which is not always connected to a simple source server or device. But it can catch a lot more now, and it makes the source clearer. And also in some cases, the source name itself was already clear enough because it had the server name in it. But I think this will catch a lot more possibilities now and make it more clear what you are actually tuning at that moment. Now the next one is also a small one to make things easier to read and understand. If you open up an override summary view on a monitor or a rule, you sometimes have one with a lot of overrides applied to it, and the list seems mixed. An example is that people often have a lot of overrides on the disk free space monitors. Now there is a sort option for these options in the view now, and it is a small change, but for some it will certainly help. And actually this picture shows that only the name column can be sorted, but actually the other ones can be sorted as well as soon as you put your mouse on it. For those cases where the REST API for SCOM is used to collect data and alert data is collected, there's now an option to scope the output to a specific group. This is done by adding the group ID option and putting it in a string, which is the group ID internal name. So not the display name of the group, just use the internal name. In this way, you can further specify the alert rules that you get back from your API call to just the ones from, for example, the SQL computers group or the domain controllers. With SCOM 2016 and 2019, when an organization wanted to disable NTLM completely, the SCOM reporting services was not working anymore. In SCOM 2022, during SCOM reporting installation, you get an option to go to Windows Negotiate directly if the reporting component is installed on a separate server dedicated for this purpose. So there are some things to keep in mind, such as setting the SPNs correctly for the SDK, for SQL, the backend, and for SQL reporting services, in order for this to work correctly. Now, while on the topic of reporting, the change tracking reports which got added in SCOM 2019 UR2 and UR3 have been moved from the generic report library to a separate folder in the reporting pane. This makes them easier to find because they are there for a specific purpose. So no new reports were added to this version, just the location got changed. In previous versions of SCOM, there was a built-in dependency on the local system account being part of the SCOM administrator's role. This was kept invisible from the SCOM console, so you could not see that it was there. Now, for the dependencies on this account have been removed for the affected actions. The account still does get added by default, as you see in the middle there, but it is now visible and it can be removed if needed. Now, this is a lot better for the security conscious SCOM users out there. With new versions also come new support statements. Some notable items here are the support for .NET 4.8 got added. The PowerShell 3.0 is now the minimum version needed for monitoring as well. For browser support for the web parts, there is Internet Explorer 11, but more notably the SCOM Edge and Chrome browsers of versions 88 and up are supported. For the Linux, Unix agent support, we see some new items got added to the list, such as Ubuntu 20, Oracle Linux 8, and Debian 10 and 11. We also see a lot of items disappearing from the list. This has to do with the vendors of those distributions ending mainstream support for those versions. So this list includes the AAX, the Solaris, Red Hat 5 and 6, and the Red Hat 7 PowerPC. So the normal version of 7 is still supported, by the way. We also see CentOS 6, Debian 8, /11, and again the PowerPC version of /12, and finally Ubuntu 16. Now, the list of unsupported items might seem long, but to me it is understandable why this happens. And it does not say that you cannot get monitoring to work on those. In previous versions, we also used older management packs and packages belonging to those distributions and versions and just loaded them up into SCOM. I have not tried all of those yet, but I think there is a chance that you can get it to run, though not supported. Keep in mind that being able to use some of the new features sometimes may be what you need most, over something which still works to become unavailable, to something which still works to become unsupported. Now, this support statement purely has to do with the cross-vendor things and not really a program problem. Now, we will see in the community if this is the case for some of these items, that they actually work with the old packages. And I think if the security edition, which we just saw, which got changed to the 256 version, if that does not stop this support from working, then you should still be able to load up an old pack and get it to work in the new SCOM. Again, it's not supported, but let's see what happens. Keep an eye on the post in the community. Now that we have talked about the most notable changes in SCOM, we can chat a bit about the migration story. Since there is little time in this session, I will cover the basics only and mention the big things. I will be doing a separate SCOM upgrade and migration story in a few weeks from now, so keep an eye on my blog for that one. First of all, let's talk about the good news. That good news is that there is an upgrade possible from SCOM 2019 to SCOM 2022. So again, by one version up, as usual with all of the previous upgrade scenarios. This was always going to be one version up. When talking about the supported system requirements for SCOM 2022, we always look first at the Windows and SQL prerequisites we need to run our SCOM infrastructure servers on. First of all, the Windows Server version this runs on. For SCOM 2019, this used to be Windows 2016 and 19, and this is now Windows Server 19 and 22 for the SCOM 2022 server components. So keep in mind, this is for the server components. For SQL, the requirements are now SQL 2017 and SQL 2019 with CU8 or higher, of course. But I assume that you will always install SQL updates as well right after SQL installation. Keep in mind that it does get forgotten regularly and that the install wizard will give strange errors if you have not updated your SQL 2019 to the later cumulative updates. Because SCOM because SQL 2022 is still in the future, nothing can be said about the supportability with that version at this moment in time. So we are looking at SQL 2017 and 2019 for now. Now, when looking at these SCOM agents, these are supported for Windows Server 2012 and higher. And for the clients, this is Windows 10, like before, and also Windows 11 now got added as well. Now, these items are as expected, to be honest. Now, during a migration, whether it is an in-place or a side-by-side, you are likely going to use the SCOM console on one machine to connect to two different SCOM management groups. Also, when upgrading the test environment first and production a little bit later. Now, what you need to be aware of is that the SCOM 2022 console has had some changes in the background, which is in part due to the SDK changes and the new role-based access model additions. This means that if you plan on connecting a SCOM 2022 console back to a SCOM 2019 management group, that it will fail and crash the console. Now, for in-place migration scenarios and some other migration scenarios, upgrading the SCOM consoles on other machines, such as workstations and tooling servers, was one of the last things to do. And in this case, it is even more important. If in the other direction you connect a SCOM 2019 console to a SCOM 2022, it seems to not crash, but it cannot show you options which have been built into the new SCOM version. It would just look like a normal SCOM 2019, let's say. So you could do that for a little while, especially for the monitoring parts, but try and keep the versions separate for the SCOM consoles. Now, while thinking about upgrading System Center components, we do have to first consider if we are using multiple products in the suite. If we do, we are looking at this order of of upgrading if possible. And as you can see, SCOM is about in the middle of that story. So if you're upgrading a lot of different versions, a lot of different products in the System Center suite, you need to keep in mind that there is a preferred installation order and upgrade order as well. This only applies in cases you have integrated these products with each other. If they are just running separate from each other, then it really wouldn't matter that much. Now, when we look at these SCOM upgrades, we need to weigh the main options that we have for upgrades again. Are we doing an in-place upgrade or a side-by-side migration? The in-place option is relatively quick, but it is only made to go one version of SCOM upwards. If you want to in-place upgrade multiple versions up, there are several more things to take into account. This can already happen with the upgrade for one version as well. For example, if you are running SCOM 2019 on Windows 2016 servers, you cannot just in-place upgrade to SCOM 2022 because the operating system is then not supported anymore for this new version of SCOM. This means that you would first have to upgrade Windows and perhaps SQL as well before going up a version. You can imagine that this becomes more painful if you have to do this a few times when coming from lower versions of Windows, SQL, and SCOM. And of course, having to do this in a production system. Several companies do select this option when possible because it retains nearly all adjustments that they have made before. If you need to go up multiple versions, you are often selecting for a side-by-side migration. Here you set up a new SCOM next to the existing one, and you install and configure it. And in the end, bring all of the management packs and agents across to the new platform. This does take time, but it can be done while the current setup is still running. It should not bother your users or the monitored service too much either. It gives some options there as well to make changes as needed. For example, getting rid of old management packs and you will find that there are several of them with references to other obsolete management packs, which you need to remove as well now. So these types of migrations do take some time. It all depends on the size and level of customizations and connections you have in your monitoring and to your monitoring, whether this will take longer or a shorter time to execute. By the way, do not forget to remove the old management group as well when you're done. Now, this is a graphic you may have seen before in my talks about upgrading SCOM in the last few years during webinars and in-person events. It is the SCOM upgrade tree. In the middle, we see different versions of SCOM and how you can upgrade from one version to the other. You see in small the semi-annual channel version to the right there as well, which we will now quickly ignore again. So now we are going to make this more interesting by adding Windows Server versions to it. Now, first keep an eye on these lines floating in. So what these lines represent, if they are touching the SCOM version right in the middle, and I hope they are, is that this SCOM version supports the Windows Server version right below and above the line. Here are the Windows Server versions. For example, if you're running SCOM 2016, you can do that on Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 2016. If you are looking at SCOM 2019, you can run it on Windows 2016 and 2019. But you cannot run it on a version lower than that. And looking up now at SCOM 2022, this supports running the infrastructure bits on Windows 2019 and Windows 2022. Now, if in your design or migration plan, if you pick a SCOM version, you need to decide your Windows Server version from the underlying platform as well. And if you can, you go for the highest supported Windows version as well, because as you can see, it makes an in-place upgrade to the next SCOM version likely possible. Now let's add SQL to the story. Now here are the SQL versions. And again, you see sometimes one or two versions above or below a line. For SCOM 2019, you are looking at SQL 2016 and 2017 and 2019. But looking at SCOM 2022, it is only SQL 2017 and SQL 2019, which is supported there. The newer version of SQL is coming out too far in the past, past also the SCOM 2022 release date. So the supported list for the SQL backend is still SQL 2017 and 19. You need to keep this in mind while thinking about version upgrades of SCOM and when designing a new SCOM management group. And you might be relying on what the organization supports and is ready for. You may even be the first one to ask if it is possible to run a new installation on a SQL 2019 instance in that organization. One other thing is that it does not happen that often that a newer version gets supported. So you cannot design a SCOM 2019 today and take Windows Server 2022 as the base of it. Maybe it will work, but it has not been tested, so it's not supported. Of course, you should, in that case, if you are using Windows 2022, you should also be using SCOM 2022. Keep in mind that the combination of these is important for your backend and for the question if you can upgrade from the previous version to a new one, or from the one you design now to the next one coming after that. Now, while we are talking about planning something, depending on your chosen path, you make a list of steps needed to get to the end result. For an in-place upgrade, there are a lot of moving pieces and steps you need to do in order. And for a side-by-side migration, you might be looking at a full new design and implementation plan, followed by the migration plan itself. In most cases, this is mostly related to the existing designs which are already there. And in some cases, it also requires a rethink of the implementation. Now for this plan, we can first put in the biggest steps. These include Windows and SQL upgrades or fresh implementations. What do we need to get ready for those items and get them implemented or upgraded? Next, we are looking at the upgrade or implementation steps for SCOM in the main steps. And you follow that by taking these main steps and splitting them up into more detailed steps. However, often you need to consider process as well. Migrations could require new designs, project setups, budget, connections to other projects and products, and also more and more. We have to put the steps in a logical order and accept that these steps will run simultaneously in some cases. For each step, determine how much time it costs to get it done. Who is going to do these steps? This can be a SCOM admin, a DBA, somebody at the networking team or security team, or even an external consultant. Note if, for example, a change is needed and approved by the change board, or if others, such as monitoring users, need to be notified. That way, you can work through your worksheet and put checkboxes or change colors according to where you are for each step. And a timeline can be made from this. Some migrations take from hours to days, while others require a process spread across several months. Now, where can you find more information? Not all migrations are the same. There are several things which can be different, and also you may need to keep into account integrations between SCOM and other products. Now, in the past, we have presented some migration webinars which go more into steps for different upgrades and migration scenarios. And we will soon do one of those again. I invite you to our website, topcore.com, where there's a webinar session, a section with past and future webinars on it. Also, you will find a wealth of resources at Kevin Holman's page. This includes also packs, which will help you to check and manage agents and other things. And a lot of information about implementations, upgrade steps, etc. can be found at the Microsoft Docs site. Most pages have been reviewed and published in the 2022 version by now. This concludes the content part of this session. We at TopQore offer a number of services around this topic. We have a health check, which includes also SCOM 2022 checks. We offer trainings for SCOM operator, administrator, and even up to the specialist level. But it is also about free webinars that we do, such as in this SCOMathon event. We also carry out implementations and upgrades as you would expect. And lastly, our maintenance and knowledge partner programs give the solutions to keeping either SCOM or yourself up to date and offer guidance on the best ways forward to a better and healthier monitoring platform, which results in happier and healthier company, network, and applications. By the way, also we have SCOM 2022 resources in our blog posts on our website and other webinars and presentations that we offer, such as the upgrade story. We invite you to come and see our vendor session as well, which is titled Knowledge Partner versus Traditional Consultancy, where we attempt to discover a number of changes in the last few years in questions and requests that we receive to also become more of a knowledge partner, aside from just coming in and clicking some stuff for a while and then going back out, which is what we mostly get asked to do for consultancy projects assignments. So this is how we can also be a regular sparring partner and mentor for several customers at regular intervals at a favorable rate. This session was at 9:30 British Standard Time this morning, but if you have missed it, you can watch the recording afterwards. This is one of the big advantages of the SCOMathon, that all sessions are recorded and can be watched again. Now, this was a short session about a large topic. If you have any questions, feel free to jump into the chat right after the next slide, and it should be there to answer questions or to discuss fun things around monitoring as always. With that, I thank you very much for listening to the story. Now, if you have made it to here, we will be issuing a TopQore community badge for this specific session soon, when we have the data on who was in the session. That is it for now, and we hope to see you again very soon.